Hey guys, Jared here, Magnetic Men's Club. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I want to talk to you about two very different people. Hopefully you know who they are. We're talking about the beloved Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and we're talking about Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. In this video, I'm going to compare and contrast their two styles, but both very masculine. See, society right now has this men viewing masculinity one way. You have to look a certain way, maybe you have to grow a beard, you gotta be 6 foot tall, full of muscle, you gotta talk a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, and if you're none of those things, then by definition, you're not masculine. Well, I'm here to challenge that, because if you've watched any of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if you ever watched that as a kid and you've watched him interact with children and you watched him interact with adults, you'll see there's a very calm, very quiet strength about him. Likewise, if you ever watched the comic books or read the comic books of Captain America or even the Marvel movies, you'll see in the beginning of the Captain America, the Marvel series, the movies out there, you'll see Steve Rogers as this very scrawny, very wimpy kid, but he stood up for himself. And of course, you know how it went. He went into this chamber. I don't really know what happened, but he went in this chamber and he came out super jacked. But who he was as an individual never changed. He was very kind, he was very generous, he was very giving of others. He just happened to transform into this badass soldier. What I would like you guys to see is both of those men, although they're in two different bodies, two different forms, and yes, they are two different characters, both exemplify positive masculinity. Now, I know society has this term thrown out, toxic masculinity, and I've done videos on that and how that's just a stupid saying. Those two words don't even make sense together. But today we're going to talk about positive masculinity, the similarities and differences of both of these characters, and what I'd like to introduce to you just a little bit is the first in a series of what's called attachment styles. And both of these men have what's called secure attachment. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the nuances on that because this one is really more about masculinity and to help you guys kind of understand that there is not a blueprint or one specific person that you can look at and say, well, he's masculine, and then look at another person and say, well, because you don't look like him or act like him, you're not masculine. Maybe you're a little bit of a scrawnier kid. I went in the military at 6'1", 135 pounds. I'm 6'1", 215, 220 pounds now. Vastly different from me at 18 to me at 48. Those who don't know me, the purpose of this channel is obviously to help men. I do help women as well, but primarily to help men understand their own masculinity, its power, its purpose, and not apologize for being fearfully and wonderfully made by God. He made you in His perfect image. You do have value, you do have worth, you do have opinions, you do have thoughts, and I don't want you to play small. I know society bashes men. I know society pushes men down, and they talk about men as being these bumbling buffoons. However, I want you guys to understand that this world, this society would not even exist without men, okay? Men have created everything that you see around, and men maintain everything that you see. So don't let women tell you that they don't need men. It's a complete farce. It's complete bullshit. But let's get on tap. So these two men have in common, besides their masculinity, what they call a secure attachment. And there's 4 different types of attachments, and we're going to get into those in another video, but specifically these 2 men share what's called secure attachment. And that all that means is how they're showing up for themselves, how they view themselves, and how they show up and how they view others. Secure attachment is about 50% of the population, give or take, depending on what study you read. And it's the only healthy attachment style. There's 4. Secure is really the only healthy one, okay? And somebody who has a secure attachment is someone who has the belief or understanding or thought, I'm okay and you're okay. And this is sort of like their emotional anchors. Maybe you have people in your life who exemplify this. They're just emotional anchors. They're always present in situations. They feel just as comfortable in a relationship, and they feel just as comfortable not in a relationship. They understand how to regulate and control their own emotions, or they know how to self-soothe. And we'll get into the why in another video and how these attachment styles come to be, but both of these men exemplify what's called secure attachment. Captain America, Steve Rogers, he represents that traditional hero archetype. Again, strong, badass, really good looking, chiseled, jack. And Mr. Rogers reflects almost the mirror image, which is more compassionate and nurturing, what we call that tender aggression. He's more on the tender side, but because he owns it, because he's authentically him, he does come off very masculine. And how this masculinity is rooted is in their values, okay? Masculinity is rooted pretty much in what you value. So Mr. Rogers consistently provides in his, as his character, a safe space for neighbors, for children, for his friends in his neighborhood, okay? His society, where Captain America has this commitment to justice and he showcases his reliability. But both men form meaningful connections with people. Mr. Rogers forms bonds through his kindness, his empathy, his understanding, and Captain America is really through his loyalty to his friends and his commitment to his relationships. Their differences represent the opposite ends of the spectrum. Mr. Rogers, on his end, is more, like I said, he's more open about his relationships, which creates this warmth and inviting kind of atmosphere. You feel safe around him. You feel really good around him. I remember watching his shows when I was a kid, and kids have a very chaotic life. You go to school, your teachers are telling you what to do, you have homework, you're learning how to interact with kids, you're learning how to interact with adults, there could be bullies, and then you come home. Who knows what kind of dynamics go on at home. So kids have a very dynamic and often a very conflicted lifestyle. And so to come home and see this man talk about his feelings in a way for kids to understand and open up, and tell kids it's okay to have feelings, it's okay to express your feelings, it's okay to be kind. For me, watching this was very calming. I had a very calm sense, and when the show was over, I always felt better. I kind of grounded myself to it. So maybe you did. I'm a little bit older. I watched the shows. So you have Mr. Rogers on that side of the spectrum, and then you have Captain America. He's not super emotionally connected to people, but he's not an avoidant. He conveys his feelings more through action, which is more of a reserved demeanor that he has, but he's not an avoidant. He just doesn't openly emote. Now, his side, I more gravitate to, because even in my teachings to men and in my other videos, I've expressed time and time again, it's okay for men to have emotions. It's okay for men to feel their emotions. It's okay for men to even talk about their emotions. But there's a time and a place, and it's never okay to emote your emotions. The last thing we want to do is have a very emotional, chaotic man. That's a weak man. And even if you think about Mr. Rogers, he talked about this. He talked about having emotions. He talked about talking about your emotions and working through them. You never saw on his show him crying and acting like a fool and acting wildly sporadic. He just compartmentalized and dealt with his emotions on a different level. But neither of these men were very emotional. That's the key. That's the difference. That's the takeaway I want you guys to understand. And again, Captain America is more of the masculine type, that superhero type, where he emphasizes more of that physical prowess. But, you know, Mr. Rogers, he redefined masculinity by his emotional expressions and his kindness and really his nurturing qualities. Captain America often had portrayed, you know, his masculinity in combat. You know, that was his, you know, character, if you will. It was more of a war hero. But showing just your bravery and your resilience is one thing, but the opposite end of that, which is Mr. Rogers, he redefined that masculinity through his role as a neighbor and educator, emphasizing really empathy and understanding. So you have both sides of what I say. If you merge these, you have what's called positive masculinity. On the spectrum that's all positive, if you can figure out a way to weave both of these together, man, you're a pretty dangerous guy, because you're a good man, you're an honest man, you have principles, you stand up for yourself, and you have the masculinity, or the muscular, and you have the ability to be a dangerous man. What I don't think Mr. Rogers had, which I would tick down a little bit on the masculinity side, is he didn't have the ability to be a dangerous man. He was very soft, very yielding. He didn't strike fear in other men. And I do think that is a quality for masculinity, not to use the fear, but to have that presence, to have that ability. This is why I tell men, get to the gym, get to be your strongest version of yourself. Learn boxing, MMA, learn some type of a skill so you can defend yourself, because you do need that element. You do want to have other men at least look at you and for a second size you up and say, do I fuck with this guy, or do I go find an easier target? And really, you just want them to make that decision of find an easier target. So Mr. Rogers didn't really have that, where Steve Rogers, Captain America, did. And so I do tend to think you want to be a little bit closer to that end of the spectrum, and not just rely on your feelings and rely on being this gentle, kind man, because in this society, because it's so violent, you need to have that ability to inflict violence. However, having said all that, both of these men, both 100% have a secure attachment style and 100% exemplify positive masculinity. I hope this video helps. Again, if you're new here, if you could do me a favor and hit subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the bell icon so you know when new videos being dropped. I would 1000% appreciate it. I'd like to listen to you guys in your comments. Which one of these two men do you more resonate with? Or which one of these two men are you more like on the spectrum? Are you more of a kind, gentle, graceful man? Or are you more of the Steve Rogers, a little bit more reserved, a little bit more physically opposed composing, which one do you resonate with the most? I'd be interested in hearing that. Link down below is a brand new course that we have. It's 100% free. All I need is your email and a name, and you get access to this course. There's a bunch of blog articles in there. There's free video courses that you guys can take on a bunch of different subjects. We keep adding to it. Very soon, we're going to take that course and we're going to move it into an app, where that app is going to make me be 100% interactive with all of you guys that join. So if you're interested in being part of that community, it's linked down below. All you got to do is just give me an email and a name and you're in. With that, my name is Jared Schoonmaker and we'll talk soon. Thanks.